Welcome to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live, where we offer the news, weather, traffic, sports, information, and entertainment our commercial drivers want to hear. I'm your host, Shelley Johnson. Speaking of entertainment, there's nothing more suspenseful than a good horror story. Sitting around the campfire, getting scared out of your wits, watching a scary movie, and those are made possible by the writers who create them. With me today is NZondi, Ace of Horror, who's also known as Ace Antonio Hall. Ace is a multi-talented man who's an American horror author, actor, musician, and the first African-American to win a Bram Stoker in a novel category for his young adult book. The Bram Stoker Award is the most prestigious award earned by horror writers worldwide. Ace has had an amazing career with multiple jobs starting at a young age. In his first professional music gig, he played all the music for the New Kids on the Block remix and for Dirty Dog. He's also appeared on TV shows like Scandal and Desperate Housewives. Ace has a new horror novel out called Lipstick Asylum. I wanted to learn more about this amazing man, so I invited him on the show. Welcome, Ace. Thank you for being with me today.
The one, the only, Shelley Johnson. Hey, I'm so glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yes, thank you. You really are a Renaissance man. I'm wondering, where do we start? How about the beginning and what inspired you?
Yeah, well, from the beginning, I can't do anything, say anything, move forward without, paying homage to my father, Chris Assiman DC Hall. He used my real first name as his middle name, his stage name. And he was a painter, a poet. He was one of the founders of the Black is Beautiful movement, an organization called AJazz. He created the first Black superhero, came out 3 years before Black Panther. He wrote some songs that became jazz classics. We still get royalty checks from him. One is called So What by Miles Davis. Miles Davis walked off the stage. So what? Da 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 da. So what? He wrote that, and
very cool.
I guess, just being around him, through osmosis, maybe, my path was already written for me. So at an early age, I just watched him draw and paint, and I wanted to draw and paint, and I started doing that at a young age. And I guess the same thing, he wrote poetry. I started writing poetry, even though I didn't really grow up around him. When I was like 4 years old, my grandparents came and got me and took me from New York to Jacksonville, Florida. I still saw a lot of my parents. And so, so I guess that's kind of what inspired me initially as far as being creative, not the horror part. That came from something totally deep and dark and creepy. But as far as the creativeness, my father and my sister, who was a great singer, Carol Brown, and she was in a movie called Velvet Smooth with her band, and she was one of the lead singers. And so I guess creatively I got my start, from my family being so creative.
That had to have been an inspiration, and what a wonderful mentor you had with your father.
Yeah, it was cool. Mentoring by watching. He never really sat me down and said, do this, do that. But and I guess that's kind of like a lot of people's pathways, like they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. A lot of us, it's like generational, work ethics. So same for me.
Sure. And, children learn so much just by observation. They learn through, like you said, osmosis. It's something that little children are sponges. And they do. When they respect someone and love someone, they want to be like them. They want to emulate.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Have you ever heard of Dr. Bruce Lipton?
I don't think so.
Ooh, Shelley, look him up if you're into this kind of stuff. Dr. Bruce Lipton basically believes, and I believe, that just like what you said, from 7 years old and under, and I don't know the technical terms for it, but children are basically being programmed. Yeah. So those are the ages they're in. I can't remember the name of the stage that they're in, but it's a stage that we're in from those ages where it's almost like a hypnosis, where everything we see, we soak up and we're programmed. So whatever you're around from the time you're born till about 7 years old, whatever environment you're around, your parents are hard workers, or your parents fuss a lot, or whatever it is,
Yep.
that is deep rooted in your subconsciousness,
Sure.
for pretty much for the rest of your life, unless you change it or remold it to get rid of whatever may not be particularly helpful in your career. But for the most part, yeah, you're right. We just soak it up. We just soak it up
Hmm.
as kids.
And it's so important to have a positive environment for children. And
Woo,
yeah.
yes.
Hmm. They're special little people, and adults are shaping their lives without even realizing it. Yeah.
Without realizing it. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
But it sounds like you had a wonderful opportunity. As a child, did you first start with drawing or music or eventually writing? How did all of this evolve?
Yeah, I started off like I remember to this day we became friends through Facebook. A buddy of mine way back in second, third, fourth, fifth grade named Johnny Bryant. We used to draw these superheroes, and I was, and along with the superheroes, I used to draw like these King Kong and Godzilla comics. I think maybe that's where I started really falling in love with horror. Watching Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein and Dracula, and all those things as kids, and kind of inserting those images and imagery into my superheroes and comics, and making them kind of like superheroes with, superhero horror, super horror heroes.
Hmm.
Um, and when later on, because music was such a big part of my family, loved. Oh my God! Still to this day, I loved Elvis movies and Frank Sinatra movies, and all of the Rat Pack, and Sammy Davis Jr. All of those things. We just love watching musicals, Singing in the Rain, West Side Story, and just having that part of music. I think it's kind of like part of my DNA now.
Hmm.
And when I got to when I well said well uh, around high school, yeah, around high school age, hip hop. I guess this was around 82, 83. Hip hop came on the scene. And being that I was from New York but living in Jacksonville, I would always bring down these music tapes, these mixtapes, and bring it to the masses and and my friends and my peers in Florida before anyone else heard the music. They heard it first. Back then, it wasn't like now where everything is just instantaneous.
Right.
Music would come out in New York 3 months before you'd hear it anywhere else. And so I think music kind of became a part. I started kind of break dancing a little bit, getting into the dancing part. And I had a little group. I forget the name of the group. I think, Jack of All Trades was the name of the group.
Okay.
Me and my buddy Todd Polite, who's now a minister, and we made songs, little corny songs. We created and wrote some songs, and we performed it on this talent show on TV. And it was the first time we were on TV at 19 years old, and everyone fell in love with us, and we had like a dancer. I think that's where. Well, actually, that's where I got my start into music. And then when I moved back to New York to finish my education at CW Post Long Island University, I went to school for screenwriting and filmmaking. But while I was studying that at CW Post, I was in the studio. And I was in the studio called Calliope Records. I always worked, always had money because I always had 2 or 3 jobs. And I would
Hmm.
spend all of my money recording songs. And this guy named Chris Irwin, who owned Calliope Records, loved my sound, loved what I was doing, and he gave me a spec deal, meaning that I could come there late at night when they didn't have a lot of sessions and record for free because he believed I was going to soon get a record deal. Never got a record
Wow.
deal, but met a lot of people and recorded tons of music. I mean, I've met people all the way from Madonna, to then at the Jackson's house, to
Ooh.
Prince. I mean, just hip hop stars, Tupac, to Nice and Smooth, who are my buddies and my mentors,
Hmm.
as well. I mean, just so many different artists along up to. I lived in NSYNC's manager's house, so it just kind of spun into this whole world where my one of my teachers said, "Well, Ace, why don't you transfer to music?" And I said, "I got a 3.6 average in film. Why would I do that?" So yeah, so that's kind of how I basically got really started into music and just wrote tons and tons and tons of songs and worked with a lot of artists and had a lot of fun in that industry before I
What a
found out it wasn't for me. Before I found out it wasn't for me
Oh, but what a
and quit.
wonderful opportunity. That would be just surreal, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
With all
yeah,
these
it
wonderful
was.
people. Now, I had read when you mentioned Madonna, you danced with Madonna, and she almost lost her hat.
Yeah, yeah.
What
Um,
happened there?
it was in the late '80s, and we were in a club called The World in
Mhm.
Alphabet City, right I think a little north of Houston in Manhattan, Lower Manhattan. And we went in the club, and a buddy of mine, his name is Bobby. We call him English Bobby. My other friend Scott, his father was the ambassador for Jamaica, so he knew all these models and all these dancers. And he, as soon as we came in, he saw this model and started talking to her and just forgot about us. So we said, okay, forget it. We'll go upstairs and have a good time. And
Mhm.
Bobby and I went upstairs, and he saw Madonna. He's like, Ice, Ice, look. And I'm like, what, Bobby? I'm trying to check out the scene here. Say, no, Ice, Ice, there's Madonna. I'm like, that's not, oh, wait a minute, that is her. I'll be right back. And I went to her, and she was with Debbie Mazar. I think they were like best friends at the time.
Mhm.
And I said, hey, would you like to dance? And she said, sure. And that was back during the times when she was the material girl. She had the hat on and just that whole look.
Sure.
And she said, "This is my friend Debbie." And I said, "Hey, from that point on, I ignored Debbie, because I just was like enthralled with Madonna, and we
Oh, yeah.
danced, and it's to the house music, and I love house music. That's music. That's that, da
Mhm.
da 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 da. And
Right.
we danced for a long time, maybe two or three songs, but that's maybe 20 minutes. And I'm having the greatest time of my life with Madonna. She was married to Sean Penn at the time. I didn't care. I'm 19, 20 years old.
Mhm.
And, I'm doing my little dance moves. I'm trying to show her I know how to really, groove. And I did this spin, and my elbow kind of comes up when I do this spin, and my elbow hit her hat. And my heart just, oh my God, my heart just dropped. But the hat didn't come off. By the time I spun back around, the hat was still on, and she was cool. She kept dancing, and we danced. I don't know, a couple, more, another song, and at the end of the song, I tried to be cool. This was before I learned just be yourself, Ace. Don't try to be too cool.
Mhm.
And I said, hey, my name is Ace. What's your name? And she looked at me, and if you know anything about Madonna, if you've ever seen Madonna in interviews or what have you, she has a really sharp tongue. And she said, "You know who I am." And the way she said it just made me feel like a dog. I put my tail between my legs,
Mhm.
and whimpered off, and I said, "Okay, thank you for the dance." And I shook her hand and walked away, like just feeling so, like she put me in my place. And I have had Shelly. When I tell you, over the past 20, 30 years since that happened, I've had dreams so many times of how it went different. Where I was like, hey, I love your music. Hey, you want to drink on me? Come on, and we hung
Mhm.
out and, that kind of stuff. But
Oh,
yeah, that
sure.
never happened. Yeah, that didn't happen. So that was
But
my Madonna story.
that's great. Not many people can say they danced with Madonna, though. You know,
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that's a great
That's
story.
true. Thanks. Yeah.
TNCRadio.live is proud to carry the Steve Summers Overnight Drive Show. TNCRadio.live is dedicated to commercial drivers. We offer the news, traffic, and weather you need, and the entertainment, sports, talk, music, and celebrity interviews you want to hear 24/7. We have original shows and trucker podcasts that feature some of your favorites, like Ice Road Alex Debogorski and America's Truckin' Sweetheart Marcia Campbell. TNCRadio.live is convenient and designed for professional drivers. The best part is we're free, and you can listen anywhere you are on the road. With just one tap, you can tune into Steve Summers and us right on your phone. Simply download our app by going to app.tncradio.live. That's app.tncradio.live. Did you know that 80% of America's communities rely on trucking alone to deliver their goods? The trucking industry keeps America running thanks to the 3.6 million professional truck drivers traveling over 300 billion miles a year. Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, tells the story of trucking and its positive impact on our economy, communities, and lives. Learn how you can be part of the industry movement working to build a strong image of trucking by visiting truckingmovesamerica.com. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on TNCRadio.live. I'm your host, Shelley Johnson, and I'm talking with NZondi today. He's the ace of horror. He's also known as Ace Antonio Hall. So, Ace, I find this interesting. I understand you've always had great respect for big rig drivers.
I know that as a child, it was just always the most exciting thing in the world to drive by a trucker as a kid and look up, and see him driving and kind of yank my hand down and go, wah, 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 and then go, ah.
Yep.
That was the biggest thrill. It was just like, that connection that they were so cool. And, I just love that. And from that point on, you just always, I've always just loved truckers. At one point I thought about becoming a trucker because one of my buddies was driving. And, he was telling me about going to a trucking school. I don't know. I was like 19. I can't remember now.
Uh-huh.
But so that's how much I had a respect for the truckers in the trucking industry and the drivers.
Terrific.
So that's cool. So this is cool. Thanks.
Yeah. And drivers really appreciate that. And they love it when kids do that too, by the way. They still honk their horns. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's so cool.
There are truck shows and parades around the country during the summer. And that's part of it. They honk the horn.
I love it. Yeah. It was so cool.
Mm-hmm. So you also had a band and you have a song called Teenage Rock Star. Was that about the same time when you did that, or?
Teenage Rock Star, Shelley. Okay. So when my father passed in 2005, I quit music. I had done really only two professional things. I had worked. Greg Nice pulled me in on a project to do the tracks for a song that he was producing with New Kids on the Block called Dirty Dog.
Mm-hmm.
And we did that at D&D Studios on 37th Street. And so I did that. And that came out maybe I think I did that Christmas '94, something like that. And then this group called Inner City that was really, really hot, international club dance group from Detroit, brought me over, excuse me, to Detroit. It was the first time I was, put in a hotel and, just taken care of as a producer. And I did a few songs for them. And only one of those songs came out called Share My Life. I did the R&B version of that and had a great time. He introduced me to a game called Resident Evil, which became instrumental in my first novel and the novel that just came out, Lipstick Asylum.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was kind of it. I worked with a lot of groups that were unsigned and I wrote tons of songs in a variety of different genres, but I really didn't do anything. So I quit. That was it. I had a band called Web Slinger, because I was a big Spider-Man fan, still am. Got a Spider-Man shirt on right now. And, we did some cool songs. We even did a song called Venom because I just knew one day a movie called Venom was going to come out. That was in 2003 when I did that, and way before Venom came out. And then I moved to Cali and I started a band here, kept the same name, Web Slinger. And we did a few shows. We recorded a lot, but, it kind of fell apart because I really didn't have the same passion to learn, to hone my skills, to really do what I needed to do for music to move on. I didn't have the magic. So I quit. That's when I quit, 2005. And I'm writing a book right now and I'm still working. I know the head title, the lead title is called Shape Drifters, which I will not explain. You will learn when the book comes out because it's so unique, but it's called Shape Drifters. Mm-hmm. And the subtitle I'm kind of still working with. I was going to call it Blood Teens. Maybe I still will. I might call it Plasma Teens, just playing with it as a subtitle. And basically in the book, there's a band called Toxic, kind of like the Archies when they had a band in the comics, mm-hmm. or the Monkees. Hey, we're the Monkees, kind of like that, a fictional band.
Yeah.
and they're a teenage band of vampires. And so,
Cool.
and one of the singers named Elle, her name's Gabrielle. They call her Gabby, but she's a shapeshifter.
Ah.
And because she's a shapeshifter, she can go to school and have a normal life. And so her persona as a singer, famous worldwide singers, teenage rock star is Elle, but everyone knows her in school as Gabby, and she looks totally different. So it's a world that I'm melding between vampires and music and mystery, as well as the metaverse. You know, my last few
Wow.
books have had to deal with the metaverse. So one of the songs that she sings in my book is called Teenage Rockstar. So
Okay.
I had an idea, and I said, I wonder if I can. Yeah, I don't really, I'm not into music anymore, but let me just see if I can put something together. And I, got my buddy who plays drums for Puddle of Mud, David Moreno, one of the best drummers in California. This guy is just fantastic. And he played the drums on the track. I put the track together. I wrote it, produced it, recorded most of it in California, recorded some of it in New York, mastered it in New York, Sterling Sound. And also, I called up a buddy of mine who's in an iconic group called Onyx. One of their biggest songs from back in the days was Slam, doo doo doo, let boys be boys. But they're still out touring. They tour like almost nonstop in Europe. And he was also Moesha's. There was a TV show a long time years back called Moesha, starring Brandy. He was Brandy's boyfriend, and his name is Fredro Starr. So I called Fredro up because we used to watch. He was more into the I forget the name of the blood vampires, the one with Charlene Harris wrote, not Vampire Diaries, but Blood something,
Okay. Yeah.
something blood.
Hmm.
Anyway, so we watched a couple of those episodes. So he was really into the vampire world, and I said, "Hey man, I'm singing this song kind of gritty. I need a gritty voice because he has that he has that gritty voice.
Hmm.
Would you like to do this song?" He said, "Send me the track. I don't know, Ace. Send me the track." So I sent him the track. He loved it. He recorded his part, and the rest is history. So July 22nd, this past July, a few months ago, we dropped the single "Teenage Rockstar."
Teenage Rock Star. Great song.
I just dropped it really to build the brand of the my book that hasn't even come out yet.
Mm-hmm.
Just to build a brand, my whole brand, the NZondi brand. Um, but I really didn't expect it to go anywhere. It's every day. Maybe I get 10 or 12 different tweets from online radio stations that are loving it and playing it.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't really expect much of it, but it's a cool song. So people are really digging it, and that kind of led me to signing with TME, record company. I got a distribution, and it's all over. You can get it now. Teenage Rock Star, by NZondi, featuring Federal Star. And this in 2 Fridays from now, on the 28th, we're gonna drop the version without Fredro. It's the Halloween radio version.
Ooh, very
And
cool.
so, yeah. So thanks for asking about that song. Y'all go out and get it.
Absolutely.
Hey, go out and get it. Teenage Rock
Absolutely.
Star with 2 R's.
I love it.
Thanks.
We have to go to break here on the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson. We'll be back with more from NZondi, the ace of horror, coming up. The trucking industry keeps America running thanks to the 3.36 million professional truck drivers who deliver everyday goods to 80% of American communities who rely on trucking for that last mile. The industry represents a diverse group with nearly half of drivers at 42% as minorities. Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, educates the public on the essentiality of trucking by telling the story of trucking and its positive impact on our economy, communities, and lives. Learn how you can join the industry movement by visiting truckingmovesamerica.com. Welcome back to the Truckers Network radio show on tncradio.live. I'm Shelley Johnson, and I'm talking with NZondi, the ace of horror, a.k.a. Ace Antonio Hall. He's a multi-talented man and award-winning urban fantasy and horror writer. You know, you have done so many things here. You've been a former director of education for the New York City Schools, Sylvan Learning
Yes.
Center. You
Yes.
have a solid background in education. You're a
Yes.
horror novelist, which is kind of a juxtaposition to all of this. What got you into horror? And certainly, wow, kudos to you, a Bram Stoker Award. That's amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. That just I still can't believe that happened. I've never won any award ever in my life. But it just goes to show myself and to show anyone that if you really focus on your craft, like I took classes, that was the first time I was really serious about something. I took classes, I joined writing groups, I volunteered for hundreds of different events, hundreds. And I had mentors, and I listened to my mentors, and I read in my first year before I wrote a book. I read 50 books in this genre. So I was so focused. I would go to Starbucks at when it opened, on the one on Shoop in LA in Woodland Hills. And I would go there when it opened at 5 in the morning and stay there when it closed to 11 p.m. at night.
Wow.
On the weekends, back hurting, taking pain pills, but I was gonna write. And I wrote about 1 million words, and it took that much dedication. And by the time I got around to writing Owari Mosaic, um, which is kind of like a detective vampire kind of book. It's really it's a medical procedural, kind of like Quincy back in the 70s, but with a young black girl. When I wrote that, I guess it was at the point at where my peers and the esteemed literary people in the horror profession thought it was, worth winning the best book in the world. So I am just extremely, extremely pleased for that.
What a terrific honor. Let's listen to an excerpt of you reading from Owari Mosaic.
Chapter 1, Ghana, Africa, 2025. Not so distant future now. All right. Below 2025 are these numbers. What do they mean? 01010100 dash 0110001, right? Space 01110100 space 01110101. Oh, it means something, And that's after every chapter. All right, so here starts out. I was born in a dead man's city. My first taste of how bitter life was came when my parents died on my 8th birthday. I ended up springing from foster home to foster home, but spent the majority of my useless childhood playing role playing games online to flee from the sting of the African streets. I never played with dolls, wore makeup, nor had a boyfriend. Why? The world had fallen ill due to a virus called hate. And that was one disease that led to war so brutal it crippled the planet. So there wasn't much to do in an insufferable wasteland but play virtual reality games, get wasted, and berate myself for still wanting to make a difference on a planet where the word hope had become obsolete in all languages.
That's powerful stuff. What inspired you to write? How did you get started?
The way I started was I was a little kid. I tell everyone this story. I was a little kid. This is real quick. Back when we used to have milkmen, and the milkman would come and drop a milk, a milk bottle at your door.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I went out to get the bottle, and I saw blood dripping down, like blood droplets on each step, going all the way down the step, all the way to the front, down the sidewalk, and it went from to the left and it went to the right.
Wow.
And my imagination just opened up. I was scared, but at the same time, I just wondered who could have done that. Was it a murderer? Was it a thief? Was it a wolf? And I think from that point on, I got enamored with horror and the imagination of creating stories out of that. And I started telling ghost stories to my little nieces, and that's kind of like where it all started. From that little crazy experience, I believe.
It's amazing what can trigger that interest and in what is the inspiration that it sets you on a particular, direction.
Yeah,
So I would imagine at that point you wanted to learn more about horror and you watched a lot of movies.
woo, yeah,
Were you allowed to at a young age to watch horror movies? Because a lot of times parents and grandparents are like, no.
yeah. I was, but it was I never thought about this until you just asked me that.
Hmm.
It wasn't like I watched rated R movies or anything like that, but we all watched horror movies together.
Okay.
And then once I became a teenager, I'd watch whatever I wanted to watch, went to the
Hmm.
movies and watched it, So yeah, they allowed me to watch horror movies and it was cool. I'm glad they did. It made me who I am today.
Who were your novelists that you really admired?
I have the very, very I'm very simplistic I'm very simplistic is not the word. My answers are probably the normal answers, but it is what it is. Um, I've always I got to a stage in my life where I like I said I wasn't around my father a lot, so I would start watching people, men, and emulating them from Bruce Lee, to James Rockwood from the Rockwood Files,
Hmm.
and so I started watching people who were the greatest at what they did, from Michael Jordan to Muhammad Ali, people, Evil Knievel, the
Hmm.
people who were the greatest at what they did. And I would watch them or buy their books. And it's the same thing in this industry. I mean, it's mine are Stephen King, which
I love
probably,
Stephen King. Yeah.
yeah. So it's,
I've always
yeah.
maintained it's a good thing he's a writer because I think he could be a serial killer. I mean, he looks scary.
Yeah, he does. Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know.
yeah. So Stephen King, Stephen King
Yeah.
is the number one. I have maybe 20, 30 of his books. I don't know. I have tons of his books and people keep buying me books. I have so many books I haven't even read yet because 600-page books he has. And then Richard Matheson, oh my God, I didn't even realize that one of the reasons why I love the Twilight Zone so much is because Richard Matheson wrote so many episodes for the Twilight Zone.
Wow.
Um, and I Am Legend, I mean, it's just Richard Matheson. And then
Hmm.
later in life, in my 30s, I was introduced to Octavia Butler and The Parable of the Sower and just so many different books that she wrote. including Fledgling, which I think is probably one of my favorite, one of the best, not even my favorite, I think it's one of the best werewolf books ever written,
Mm-hmm.
Fledgling.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I would say those three people are probably my biggest inspirations. You know, Stephen King, number one, Richard Matheson, Octavia Butler.
Did you like Vampire Lestat? That kind of
Yes,
inspired
yes,
you? Okay.
yes. And you know, like, um, that's why you got to be really careful when you're a writer telling other writers your stories because
Right.
sometimes we'll forget where we got it from, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, reading about Lestat and how he was a rock star. Remember, he was
Mm-hmm.
um
Hmm. He was quite the
uh
character.
he was quite the character, and he was always sophisticated, and you know that has been it was so deeply rooted in everything that I love that not intentionally, but how could I not have a character that loved music? You know, it was eventually going to happen. You know what I
Sure.
mean? So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't even intentional. Like I say, I'm going to make a character like Lestat. It's just something that happened because I loved Anne Rice and what she
Yep.
did with those characters and that, you know, in that book, as well as um, Laura K. Hamilton, you
Mm-hmm.
know, Anita Blake series. You know, I just love what Laura K. Hamilton does. She's probably be my fourth, you know, in the top four. No really besides Stephen King being number one, but no order. But Laura K. Hamilton and what she did with the Anita Blake series, you know. But yeah, Lestat, I love what he did and the whole rock star. Yeah, that's definitely a big influence on what I'm writing now. Absolutely.
And it's wonderful. That's why reading's so important. And certainly you having been in education, you know that. It
Hmm.
is an inspiration. When I was a little girl, my mother encouraged reading.
Hmm.
And before I could read, I memorized the books and I convinced people I could read, I think, at the time, but I couldn't. uh, but, that was part of my upbringing and the importance of it. And I remember I always had a book, always. And it was portable and it was something you could do when you were bored.
Yes,
Oh, and it took you somewhere else. And it
yes.
inspired me to write at a very young age, actually.
Yes. Oh, that's cool,
Um,
really.
and
So
and I
who are some of your favorite writers?
Well, I think some of the ones that initially, well, Edgar Allan Poe was in our
Wow. Oh,
bookcase.
oh, oh,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And
Wow.
he was scary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Murder at the Rue Morgue and all of the different
Mm-hmm.
things that
Mm-hmm.
happened to people. And
Yeah.
my mother liked him. And I remember this is an interesting story. Talking about scary stories, I was in sixth grade and it was around Halloween, and the assignment for all the class was to write a scary story. And then
Right.
when we were done writing the story, we would read it, sit in a circle with a light, and turn down the lights in the
Ooh.
classroom and read the
Ooh.
story. And I wrote the story. What was it? It was called "What Happened at Pine Grove Cemetery." It was something that happened at a cemetery.
Ooh.
That I wrote about, and of course I was influenced by uh, Dark Shadows, the TV
Mm.
show,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
that sort of thing,
Yeah.
and certainly Edgar Allan Poe, and of course my mother had proofed this whole thing, and I was practicing how I was going to read this and everything, and I did it
Yeah.
really evil. And there were people who had gems being embedded in their brains and all kinds of really scary
How old
stuff.
were you? How
Uh,
old?
I was 12, and
Wow.
my high school
Brilliant.
well, thank you. My high school reunion, I ran into somebody that was in that class, and he said, "Are you still writing?" I said, "Yeah, but I'm a journalist at this point." He said, I had nightmares after you read that story."
The
He said,
greatest compliment.
he
I
said,
love it.
he said, "You were so evil." And he said, "My mom went down to the principal's office to find out who this scary girl was that had written that story." I never
Wow.
had heard about that, but I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I love it. That's a cool story.
And my mother had, read through this. She didn't find it inappropriate. I mean, apparently,
Right, right.
yeah, it was scary.
Your mom saw talent and she encouraged it. She nurtured it.
Yeah, and she
So
knew it was just, imagination, which is a good thing.
right, right. Yeah, exactly. That's cool.
So,
That's very cool.
well, thank you. I wanted to talk about your latest books and where people can
Yeah.
find them and what all they're going to find when they pick up your book to read it.
Okay. Let's start with the last one.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can find it anywhere where books are sold online, pretty much. So Amazon, if you're not a big Amazon person, anywhere else, pretty much, where it's sold online. And the titles are Owari Mosaic, Oware. So like Owari, and Mosaic, like a puzzle. And the other one is called Lipstick Asylum. And I grew up around a lot of women, and so I'm always a champion for girl power. And so all my books feature strong female protagonists. Uh,
Excellent.
my first my first book was a silver slasher book. It was thank you. Was about a Hawaiian girl who kicked zombie butt, and I kind of reimagined that with the latest book, Lipstick Asylum. And Cozy Coleman is an African American young lady who has a lot of issues, and she really has to get out of her own way of the issues that she's going through. And I wanted to tackle some of the issues that, I taught eighth grade for 13 years. So I was around teenagers, 13-year-olds all the time. And I saw a lot of the issues that they dealt with in life. And I wanted to draw characters that dealt with those kind of issues, some of the issues of abandonment or what they thought were abandonment. It's so funny when, parents are very successful, they're working all the time. And to a child, that might feel a little bit like abandonment, when they're always working or always on vacation, that kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And so, I wanted to kind of deal with those issues from different perspectives from a teenager's point of view, and as well as romance and the kind of problems that they deal with boyfriends and that kind of thing. So my books deal with issues I feel, or I attempted to portray that teenagers from 13 to 18 deal with, not being liked, not really knowing, what they want to do in life, being reckless with some of their choices because everything seems fun. So I just dealt with a lot of those type of issues. But then the I don't want to call it maybe fodder. The fodder of it is they're surrounded by monsters, and all the monsters really the physical beings that are around them, or are the monsters really all of the obstacles in their life that prevent them from being happy.
Hmm.
And so I deal with those types of themes in those books.
That's terrific. Let's get a sneak peek at Lipstick Asylum. This is you reading from your latest book.
So here's how it starts off. Some girls talk too much, others stole boyfriends, but my vice was raising the dead, and I've got receipts. Maybe, just maybe, as a little black girl growing up in Brownsville, I spent one too many nights stealing my father's password to his Netflix account to secretly binge watch horror flicks. Because now we live in Honolulu. Not only am I a lifetime member of FML Incorporated, I'm a walking, talking freak show on the island. The chicken scratch I signed the back of my checks with said Cozy Mel Coleman, but most times I just went by Cozy. And just in case it crossed your mind, I heard every porn joke in the book, making wisecracks about my name so you can keep them to yourselves or catch a fat lip. I made a pretty cool living working as a necromancer with the Scream teams. Our parents wanted us to have a more business-like name like Honolulu Aerial Ash Scattering Company or Resurrection Incorporated. Jess, Squiggy, and I thought those were lame names. What's the first thing you want to do when a corpse is reanimated? Scream, right? Point made, microphone dropped. Moving on, new deal. We raised zombies for mourners to say their last goodbyes. A lot of times we did it for police investigations, or if a person died before making a will, and we'd have to dig them up to find out who got what. Afterwards, we cremated the dead heads and scattered the remains over Hawaii's beautiful waters. As a matter of fact, Some guy from the military base in Honolulu kept blowing up my phone, leaving messages on my voicemail that he wanted me to raise some dead soldier for a case they were investigating. But I had other plans. Look, I just turned 18, so if I wanted to ditch some lame colonel for something way more hella fun, I would. What? Can a girl have priorities? Twilight peeked over my shoulders as I looked for my friends while aboard the Sea Queen, aka the ship of 1,000 corpses, the best freaking zombie themed cruise in America. Imagine being one of those magnificent hotels in Las Vegas during spring break. The golden elevators, escalators, walk-over bridges, restaurants, and stores filled with tons of thrill-seeking college kids and horror-geeked adults. You could call the Sea Queen one of the world's best luxury hotels, but on water. A woman hired me to do a raising on the ship. Jess and her boyfriend Squiggy, both Harlem born and Kenyan descended like me, small world, were going to help. After I finally got dressed, I saw Jess's wacky picture that she posted on Insta Snap and her little bitchy complaint that she and Squiggy were waiting on me. I'm always fashionably late in the bar on the deadhead deck. Unfortunately, I didn't have a clue where to go. The captain was escorting me up, but some urgent call came in and he dashed out of the elevator speaking radio codes into his walkie talkie. Almost done. Check this last paragraph out. One of my all-time fave videos, Savage, played on the inside of the elevator doors via a high-tech projector system. I loved it that I could watch a music video, although one I've seen a gazillion times, inside of the elevator. A volume control knob sat beneath the red emergency button. In the video, Megan brushed her teeth while telling those fine men that were washing her car that they missed a spot. I love that part. All right, that's enough. I turned the sound down so I could briefly gather my thoughts for the raising. Watching those bare chested men got me too distracted. The elevator doors eased open. I stepped out, immediately folding my arms and shivering. I wore a black midriff t shirt, tight leather pants, and some 5.5 knee high gothic boots. I sighed, berating myself for not wearing a warmer top. The ship's fake fog blanketed the air so I could barely see anything. Already late, I didn't want to waste any more time, so I stopped to ask a person dressed like a zombie nun for directions. She sat on a bench in front of the ship's theater under the stars, rocking back and forth. A broken dog leash dangled in her hand. The closer I got, the more I realized her hunched, feeble posture. Lady, are you okay? I asked. She didn't answer, but kept rocking. Her abrupt movements made her wimple flap around her neck and chin. I glanced up at the speaker mounted on the wall above us, creeped out by the spooky organ music steaming out in the foggy air. The lady made a gurgling sound. Whoa. Miss, hey, are you okay? Her head lifted slowly. The yellow rays from the moon crept into the shadows under her headdress. I stepped forward, slowly, swallowing unease. A name spilled out of my mouth, slow, whispered, Mrs. Goose? And I'm going to stop right there.
Talk about a cliffhanger. We want to learn more. You're keeping pretty busy, doing more than just writing.
I just did a seminar. I was a keynote speaker and I did a writing conference at the Gold Rush Writing Conference in McCullum Hill or Moke Hill up near Sacramento. And I did a whole workshop on branding.
Mm-hmm.
And I just believe that one of the things in branding is getting yourself to the point where if someone Googles your name, you have a lot of content. So if anyone wants to find out where I am, they simply have to just Google. I had all the participants Google it. I said, I'm putting, you got to put put it to the test. And so they just Google Ace Antonio Hall and whatever you want to find, whatever I've done, there's pages and pages and pages of interviews. I was on the cover of 2 magazines last month. For the first time in my life, I'd never been on the cover of a magazine. It was 2 at one time. You see all of that stuff. And now that I'm coming out under my pseudonym, my pen name, which is my real middle name, NZondi, you simply have to Google NZondi. Just Google it. I'll go on Bing. I'll go on Yahoo. MSN. You just simply have to Google it, and you'll find all of my work. You'll find it all there. Or just go to my website, ANtonioHall.com.
Excellent.
And I got it all there for you.
This sounds really scary. Lipstick Asylum, where the dead rise. I love
Yeah.
it. That came out this year. And of course, you said Awari Mosaic. This is fun. You have done so many things. I would love to talk more, but of course, we do have
Let's go.
I know. Can we talk for another hour? Please, please. So, what is your website again? I want people to be able to check out your books.
It's A Antonio Hall, all one word. So AANTONIO, H is in Harold, ALL, ANtonioHall.com. And everything's there, My books are there, some interviews are there. If you go onto if you click one of the links, you'll be able to hear my song, Teenage Rock Star.
Uh-huh.
So everything's there.
You are multi-talented, and I can't wait to
Thank
see
you.
what else you're going to be doing because it sounds like you're always going in some direction that is very inspirational.
Shelly, everyone cross your fingers. Please, 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 please. I have my Lipstick Asylum and Aurora Mosaic are both being shopped to become a TV series.
Oh, will that be too cool?
Yes.
Well, we definitely want you back so you can talk about that.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
So we got a lot of good stuff, and I got a few, 2 or 3 different areas in Hollywood, entities in Hollywood that are very interested in putting them out. So keep our fingers crossed because it's a long path, but I think one of them is going to be made.
Awesome.
Look for Feeny Zoe. Feeny Zoe. That's the main character of A War in Mosaic.
Okay.
At a streaming service near you or a TV network near you.
Well, I wish you luck and many blessings on that. So hopefully
Thank you.
will go in that direction. How exciting.
Yes, that'll be great.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be great. And then I can use Shelly Johnson's voice. I'll somehow find a way to get you on there as a radio DJ. Hey, this is Shelly Johnson. Right?
Absolutely.
Right?
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yes.
And having loved horror stuff at a young age and scaring people,
See?
it would work.
We can make it happen. Yes. Yeah. That'd be cool. I love it.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's great. It's just an honor to be here. I really respect and I honor all the truckers worldwide. Thank you for doing what you do unconditionally, for pushing through that sleepiness, that fatigue, and getting the stuff that we need where it needs to be. I honor you. I pay homage to you, and I go whoop 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 to you. Thank you, truckers. We couldn't have done it without you. We couldn't have survived these last couple of years without you. So, we give a lot of props to you and a shout out to all the truckers all over, from Houston to Detroit to LA to Jacksonville, Florida, wherever you may be and traveling to and from. We thank you, truckers.
And thank you for saying that. They appreciate that. That's terrific.
Cool.
You've been listening to the Truckers Network radio show. I'm your host, Shelly Johnson, and I've been talking with NZondi, the ace of horror, Ace Antonio Hall. Stay tuned for more great programming on TNCRadio.live coming up. Thank you for listening to another great interview on TNCRadio.live and the Truckers Network radio show. All of the material you hear on TNCRadio.live, on our website, our broadcasts, or our podcasts are copyrighted. There can be no distribution without the express consent of TNCRadio.live and its partners. For inquiries, write us at info@tncradio.live.